Hi everyone, thanks for joining us again this afternoon for our weekly Wednesday afternoon webinars here with the group at Attack Solutions. This afternoon we'll dig a bit deeper here on some customer engagement pieces that we are seeing evolve in the last month during the COVID-19 crisis while everyone is working from home and trying to be socially as distant as possible. So I think our initiative here today is to bring you some information around how to stay relevant and engaged with customers while everybody is working in a different world than we were 4 to 6 weeks ago. So on the agenda here today, a couple things that we are going to touch through here. Just essentially what we're seeing in the market right now. We were actually going to have a little bit of a guest content here, but logistical issue with a hang up on their end here with True Market Designs, having just a branding and design firm, just speak to some of the importance of web presence and digital branding around your site and e-commerce. We'll get into a little bit further just around digital events. Oops, I'm a little click happy, sorry. Digital events and some of the pieces we've seen people gravitate to in the last month here. Well, they need to conduct business as usual, but in a very different fashion than perhaps maybe they were 2 months ago. Next, we'll touch on really quickly just a few things that people are doing to leverage social here at this time in terms of crisis management and ongoing communications. And we'll conclude here with just some tips and ideas on how to stay connected with people and some best practices around digital communications. If you do have questions, fire them into the chat and we'll moderate the chat throughout. We'll take questions throughout if they're relevant, or perhaps just park them to the end and we can have a little bit of dialogue framed around that towards the end of the conversation. Brittany, am I forgetting anything on this?
No, you covered everything.
Okay, awesome. So what's the impact on communication here? A couple stats here just for everyone. I know everybody really likes these stats here, and there's certainly been no shortage of what I'll classify as COVID-related communications. I know even just as recently as last night, I finally got the formal official pamphlet in the mail from the Conservatives, the UPC, and the tips for social distancing, hand washing, et cetera. So literally comms on COVID-19 at every turn. Brittany, anything you want to call out here as part of this?
Yeah, I think the two really important points here are how we communicate with customers in this moment will not only impact business now, but it'll impact business in the future. And this is a really important time to maintain a genuine and clear and transparent line of communication. It will really have a big impact on the trust that consumers have in your brand down the road. So 65% say that a brand's response will have a huge impact on their likelihood of purchasing in the future. And another big stat is the 89% that the expectation is to not just continue to offer the same services, same products. People want help now and want the messaging and services to reflect that you understand those needs right now.
Yeah, I think we'll maybe touch on this throughout, but one of the themes is trying to be in constant communication in a relevant manner. People just need to know, and I think one at a psychological level, there's a lot more bandwidth for people to connect on calls like this and these types of things that maybe before we were occupied with a lot of busyness in terms of in the office or in the workplace, where maybe we're free of some of that and we have more time and latitude for this type of stuff. And I think your point is well taken there, Brittany, around people are expecting innovation. There are going to be some shifts here, and some of the stuff we'll get into a little bit later. The term hybrid is thrown around a lot in terms of once things do reopen and we are returning to business as closer to normal, there will still be more of a demand for people who want to consume services or engage with you and your company on virtual terms. So in terms of messaging, I think one of the resounding things, we already touched on it, a couple things not to do is just to be passive and not to communicate with people. I mean, these are trying economic times, unprecedented situation that we find ourselves in, and if there's silence, I don't think the old adage of no news is good news applies in this circumstance. I think if you might be misconstrued as out of business or not actively in business if you go silent here right now. I think kind of first and foremost.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing is that people only have so much bandwidth in their inboxes right now. So if you're using those opportunities to speak to your customers without the right tone or possibly scheduled content that is no longer relevant, you're missing out on a really good opportunity to gain a connection. And there is opportunity right now to respond right and communicate and extend help and gain trust. And I look at this chance as being a really good opportunity to gain trust, but there's also that if it's not handled correctly and you're maybe ignoring the current climate or sticking with the way that you were doing things in the past, that's potentially going to corrode some trust as well.
Yeah, status quo is not the way forward here. It's a climate of change right now. So how can you be empathetic to everyone's difficult situations and be compassionate, but yet at the same time be helpful and I'll say challenging in the sense of challenging people to change their mindsets and try to evolve and try to push past some of the barriers that we currently find here. So I think big thing for me is not be overly pushy in terms of a promoting of a product or service offering. That's a big one right now. And I'm actually, while I'm on it, one last one in terms of just sitting on a nonprofit sporting organization here, and we're just looking at our season. We know it's likely going to be modified at very least, if not entirely canceled. And I think just one thematic message is be agile. Be as absolutely agile as possible. So shifting over here, hopping on to the social media and community management aspects side of things. I think now more than ever, it's a good time, and there are some pretty impressive tools out there to create some advocacy and awareness for your cause, your events, your current state of your business. So I think we'll kind of dig through this deeper, but a product we're seeing emerge really effective and well integrated to database platforms around existing CRMs are something like this social horsepower product, where it gives you the ability to create a structured plan and guide people down a path on various social channels, and it allows you to shape that path. And then from the backside, as we'll kind of talk through this further, there's relatively clean integration into CRM side. So,
and I guess for those of us that are maybe new to adopting a digital strategy, the social media is a huge part of it. It's your opportunity to speak to your customers. People are on their phone on social media more than ever now. So it's a really good chance to integrate that into your strategy. And the way that a product like this works is being able to batch out your content. So when you're formulating a campaign, we don't want to just have, a post here, a post there without anything tying them together. So having a tool like a social scheduling tool allows you to actually create a plan, create campaigns that are multi-channel. So all sort of aligning to the same goal, same messaging, but it also allows you to unite the rest of your company within that plan as well, and have one solid, this is what we're going to be posting. Maybe it's just a week since everything's changing so quickly right now, but let's batch our content for this week. and then we can automate when it's posted and make that a little bit more streamlined and also less manual too.
That, and then also taking that curated, structured, well thought out and well laid out content, and then putting that in the hands of people who are, I'll say, have a more ability to amplify the message and create more awareness and build them, build your messaging with some advocacy from those people. So if it's a membership association, for example, we have some membership associations that are creating content and then putting it in the hands of all of their members and asking them to amplify that message. It's very consistent, clear, structured. The messaging's on point, and it becomes very simple for the person spreading that message as a member to just click and share, and they don't really have to be doing a lot of their own social media maintenance.
Yeah, and Luke, to your point, when it's tied within your CRM as well, it's easy to manage everything within one place. So it's easy to pull up your accounts and see what the messaging is on their social. You can set alerts, and then that just becomes a part of your bigger picture without having everything siloed.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly, is where you have a lot of capability to guide people down that path. It becomes a very good, I kind of think of it from a business development point of view, just creating that first layer of awareness and driving people further down the funnel through your marketing and customer journey, or into a more complex sales engagement if that's the way your business is structured, or just if it's, I'll say, in a more stakeholder oriented business where you just need to see people engaging and maybe they're putting up their hand for some of the events that you're running online, which is kind of the next wave of this, where we're seeing people opt into more online events than ever before.
Mm-hmm. And a cool thing that a platform like this allows you to do is just the gamification aspect too. So it's a good way to get your own internal employees involved with sharing content. There's a leaders board, so you can see maybe it's a gift card to the person that shared the most content or got the most impressions, and you're able to look at those analytics and say, hey, when a salesperson A shared this content, that actually related to a sale. So it's just easier to report back and I guess create a little bit of a competitive aspect around it as well.
So as sport people, I know both Brittany and I appreciate a little bit of good sport competition, and I think that concept so I'll just drill into gamification. People like that as a conceptual idea, but how do you actually make it function? And I think just even in our own organization, and I'm sure lots of businesses are going through this right now, we're into north of a month of people working in a remote fashion. And I think just having internal corporate communications around how are people doing? How are they adjusting to working from home? Are they struggling? Do they have direction? Do they need more structure? Do they need different resources? I think gamification had always been kind of floated out there as a cool idea or a neat concept, but I think now there's maybe more room for that for people to connect peer to peer in the office in the virtual office in a way that maybe they're lacking for or longing for in a little more different way than now after a month of being at home. So being one of the things that we're also seeing here as we're kind of shifting gears beyond that social piece is people that have had in-person events, I'll say large social gatherings of more than 5 people scheduled for any point in time in the next foreseeable future, 6 months, 6 to 12 months, I think, is kind of what we are seeing people plan for. So if they had their annual trade show scheduled for July, how do I make this an event that's online, or at least having an online element to this, so that if we do get back to a spot where we can host in-person events eventually, how can we add this as a value-added layer on top of our overall conference or event or trade show experience? Brittany, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I think there are two components to, I guess, the shift that I think we're going to, or that we can expect towards a more virtual experience with events. A big piece of that is this is an opportunity where companies have had more of a chance to focus on creating quality virtual trade shows and conference experiences. I think out of necessity, we're seeing a ton of innovation in this area. And a product like SwapCard is a really powerful way to realize value out of a virtual experience through the digital matchmaking. So I think that is a piece that even when we do shift back into in-person events, which may not be within the next year, we'll have to see, but as that sort of pans out, I think we're going to see matchmaking becoming a piece of that type of event as well, just making the networking component easier. So now if you're attending an event like this, through a swap card app, you'd be able to see the other people that are attending the event, and it'll also use AI within your profile to match you with people that you may need to connect with, and they may be good connections for you to meet and match with. And then it also gives you just a chance to schedule time in their calendar. So I just want to schedule a 10 or 15-minute meeting. We'll let you do that straight from within the app. And then also allows you to run your conference and your sessions out of there with the whole virtual marketplace and I guess virtual booth experience as well. So I think that what we're going to see is people kind of getting used to that, like making networking a little bit easier, being a little bit more efficient, and we're going to see some of those trends carry in as we kind of shift back to hopefully things getting a little bit more normal in the next year or so. So yeah, I think that's a really cool trend that we're starting to see play out.
Yeah, online dating has evolved over the years. I think it's just an element that's making its way into the trade show, conference, exhibition space these days. So a little bit of that element layered on, but very much in the short term, it's a business continuity play for a lot of people to virtualize their conference for something that they usually would do in person, but to create that simulated experience as much as humanly possible. I think even just from the event or conference point of view, I think some of the language we've heard people use is, well, we just want to make it so that it's like we're in the room with them, like we normally would be.
Yeah. So. Some other really good feedback that we've had working with customers is that their events have actually been able to expand. So budget-wise, venues no longer a constriction, expense related to travel is no longer a barrier. So they're getting even some more like higher ranking decision makers in the room, because does it mean taking entire week off work to attend a conference? Now they're able to just hop online and join. So I think there are some really good trade-offs, and having an digital event strategy should definitely be something within your overall digital strategy. Just a really great way to maintain that connection and keep people engaged, and people are looking for ways to connect with one another right now.
Keep people engaged, but I would also argue that to broaden your reach, because as you said, I'll use Microsoft as an example, no free ads, but in essence, May 6th and 7th, they are doing their 2-day conference on business applications, everything Dynamics and Power Platform related. Typically, that's a $1,000 to $2,000 US commitment to go for the duration of that conference. So Brittany, to your point, more people are able to go to attend these things because it's not the time commitment to travel. 1, 2, other people that maybe the budget's not there from a T&E or a professional development point of view, they're able to attend because the price becomes palatable. And 3, if you take it up a rung and look at maybe some of the ESG and some of the broader implications around climate change and carbon footprint for people traveling everywhere for conferences on a regular basis, maybe we're seeing a bit of a shift there where people can interact more and travel less. So yeah. I think it's just kind of the start of a broader shift potentially.
Yeah, and so this slide just sort of speaks to a different type of event. So having a smaller webinar, town hall, that sort of thing. There's different tools. So the one that we use typically is Event Builder, and it layers right over top of Teams. So I know that there is sometimes a barrier in terms of not having a marketing automation platform to send emails, where Event Builder has that built all within it. So it manages the registration for you, sends out the emails, also allows you to add some additional functionality around polls, surveys, chats, and then again, tying that all into your CRM. So making sure that those interactions are captured and then actionable down the road as well.
Yeah, because I think that's the next piece with all of this is what is the follow-up strategy, and how do we make sure we're having relevant messaging tailored to that individual, not disjointed, not disconnected, and mostly not to make I'll say a data entry exercise following any kind of business development or trade show activity. I think we've all heard that. Well, yeah, we went to this trade show and now we have a stack of cards sitting on our desk that we need to follow up on, and then it's 3 weeks later, and then it doesn't matter. You wasted your time going in the first place if you didn't follow up in the first 48 hours or so.
Yeah, exactly. So I think one of the benefits of having a digital event is you're able to capture a lot of that information that you may not have. But if now digital events are becoming part of your strategy and those happen on a somewhat regular basis, you're going to end up with 10 different spreadsheets of data, none of them speaking together, doubling up on your interactions or your emails or follow-up calls, or maybe those aren't happening and you're missing an opportunity to continue nurturing this new contact. So really important to, before your event, don't wait till after, have that campaign in place. And then based on those interactions, lead people down a path that they're interested in. And I know that we were just talking about before the webinar how we've been getting some really great content right now that we appreciate that it's so tailored to us. And that's when people are really enjoying your content, is when it's personal and it's related to your interactions. So yeah, that's why capturing that data with an event is important, but then having that as a part of a bigger strategy is even more important.
Yeah, it's nice to be listened to. Yes. If you're getting messaging and content that's useful to you and timely and relevant and well thought out, it's nice. The other thing I think here that's important with this, and just kind of thinking more from a systematic point of view and strategy, I'll kind of take it up a couple layers from the technology, or what the data flow process is from the event to your marketing automation platform, but up a layer to the composition of your team. What does your staffing look like, and who do you put in those roles, and what are the right people to fit into the composition of that team to follow up and make sure that you're either acquiring new customers or new relationships, or growing existing ones and retaining them, or fulfilling what you've said were going to do, or whatever some of the product or services are. So if you kind of bucket from the top down of your staffing through to your business processes and technology into acquisition, retention, and fulfillment of your customers, that's maybe kind of one way to think about how these things can be all shaped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Luke, that's a really good point, because if you just look at that example of a customer journey, they can get quite complex, and there is the architecture side of things. So that's one thing that we're seeing, like with the creative agencies, is maybe not the understanding from the back end of how the technology can work and how digital marketing and campaigns should function. So just something to consider when you're strategizing your campaigns.
Yeah, it may look wonderful. The message might be perfect, but if it's not sent at the right time to the right person, or if it is sent to that right person and ends up in their spam filter, it's all for naught. So Post-event communications examples. I think a lot of us do these things in one way, shape, or form or another. So kind of one intended just to be a bit of a scorecard of ideas here, just to make sure you are doing some of these. This is by no means an exhaustive list, or there is no one magic golden bullet to solve all the problems here, but some samples here just to give you some ideas. Anything you'd like to add to that, Brittany?
No, just to call out again, you're going to be collecting a lot of data. Just ensure after the event, part of your overall event strategy is going through and cleaning that up. Just cleaning up typos, that's the one thing. Personalized data is great, except for when someone's name's spelt incorrectly, and there's just some room for error there. So just ensuring that that data is clean and it is ready. So if you're passing that on to your sales rep for follow-up, that you're, I guess, going through and giving it a once over before you're handing it off.
Yeah, if it looks like marketing automation, it probably is. So I know we were going to chat a little bit here just around the importance of online presence, and one of the companies we work with on that regard being True Market Design. So in terms of, I think thematically everybody sees this as well in terms of what's forthcoming is everyone's internet usage is increased by dramatically. I mean, I saw a little post someone the other day said, imagine this was 18 years ago and we all had to be on dial-up internet at home with a Nokia flip phone. I think it'd be a very, very different world, but everyone's consumption of internet has gone up astronomically. Netflix has just posted their best quarterly earnings of all time, and already wondering if they'll have enough content to keep things fresh for the next 2 quarters, since they've been shut down in terms of new content production. So I mean, what's the message there? All of that to say, just looking professional in your online presence. First impressions last a lifetime. So having that set up is of critical importance. And I think obviously the other part of that is people by necessity and not leaving their house. People are already buying things online a lot. I know my packages show up on my doorstep on a regular basis somehow, but that would be even growing even more so. So how has this changed? A couple things to think about here just in terms of your online presence. What kind of offers can you put out there and put onto your site that people can consume and transact? And I know everything is, it can be different here for everyone, but I know even for ourselves, starting to just put very simple starter kits together for people just to help and give them an idea of what they can get started with, so that they can go down the path and consume as much of this as possible on their own, and we can start the transaction relationship online as well. And as we talked about everything else, integrating it into the rest of your existing CRM and accounting systems, it's all possible as well.
Yeah, and Luke, just to our point earlier about being agile, because I think there is a little bit of hesitance in terms of changing strategy and saying, well, I don't want to invest in something that things will just go back to normal in 3 months. I think we're going to see some buying behavior that's going to change life even after things return back to normal. So consumers are getting used to the convenience of curbside pickup, for example, or being able to purchase something online and then go pick it up. So I think that this is going to bring about a lot of change going forward, and it's just important to kind of assess what your customers are wanting and cater to that. Don't just resist bringing about any change because things are uncertain. I think people are going to be having a little bit different expectation on how they buy and do business going forward.
For sure. And so let's deconstruct that a little bit. Even if things did return completely to normal, which I think we can all come to some level of agreement is probably not going to be the case. There's going to be a long, potentially long-term shift in a different direction to more online activity and or a staggered return to normal. But even say for 3 months, things returned in exactly 3 months time, everything returned to normal. Would you be willing to just sit on your hands and close your business entirely for 3 months if there was something that you could do for a 1 or 2 week solution it could at least somewhat close the revenue gap? You could at least maintain your customer relationships and drive some of your business forward with people. I don't think anybody would just stick their head in the sand and say, no, I'm actually waiting until things return to normal entirely and I don't need to change or evolve my business at all.
Yeah, and I think there's good opportunity to grow your business even after things go forward. So I know I mentioned the example of a small local farmers market that quickly pivoted, got an e-commerce site set up, is doing delivery, has exploded their business, but that's going to be a branch of their business that will be revenue producing going forward as well. So I think pivoting has really paid off.
That and content optimizing your messaging to bring about the most amount of the highest level conversion. Just a quick, simple example of that. One of the companies we work with here, they're a chemical manufacturer and distribution company. They've had an old warehouse, a chemical that's been sitting in the back of their warehouse for ages, and it's something they don't even actually actively promote anymore. But due to its chemical capabilities, it's fantastic for sanitizing, in particular, ambulances and vehicles for COVID. You land on their website, you literally would have to be blind not to see it. It's a huge banner right in the middle of their landing page, directing you to a shopping cart with their COVID disinfectant product. So what needs to be optimized and do that on your graphic layout, and you're going to see things react accordingly. Oops, I went a little too quickly there. Just in terms of online exposure, I think key message here, relevance. Be frequent, be on point, be relevant. There's a lot of different tactics here. Kind of breaking it into 3 pillars just in terms of your content marketing, your paid search, and your social pieces. I think we've talked around a few pieces here just on I'm big on authenticity is something that for me, I really just like to be on the authenticity side of things. Anything you want to add there, Britt?
Nope, I think you pretty well covered it.
Except for me clicking the wrong direction. Yeah, I guess kind of getting towards the end of the content here, I think one of the other things just as a overarching message is just the integration capabilities. I think more so and more so, we're just seeing things become more straightforward, more simple, easier to integrate. Talking with a personal friend of mine here who is re-architecting the sales development group for a SaaS-based online archiving product. So essentially, they archive different documentation, kind of like the new age reinvention of Iron Mountain is basically what they are. But we got down into the topic of, well, I don't know, a lot of us like to use Macs, maybe certain things don't work as well on PCs. And I said, I think that, in the cloud world we live in, with AI being what it is, and just some of the integration products that are out there, it's way easier. It's becoming easier and easier if things are all open API architecture and nature to plug things together and click things together. So I think that whole big scary integration is not what it used to be. So I think we're seeing it become quite a bit more straightforward to pick the most effective tools and link them together. Obviously, keeping in mind one common data platform as the strategy, so that you have a single source of truth and you can push that information across the organization. But I think it's easier now and less daunting than it's been in the past. Anything you want to add to that, Britt?
Yeah, I just think so. If you're creating your digital strategy, you have your social channels, you have your digital events, you have your e-commerce site potentially. We're going to talk a little bit more about email marketing as well, but you're going to be getting so much data and so much valuable data that when it lives in different systems, there's no capability of linking patterns, relaying that information to sales, and or I guess automating to make that process easier as well. So super important, and even just from, we'll get to it in a little bit more detail as well, GDPR standpoint, have that data in one spot. It's going to make your life infinitely easier.
Okay, just around the ongoing customer journey and customer engagement, the days of spray and pray are over. I think we can certainly use the analogy of the rifle as opposed to taking the shotgun and spraying a broad message. So we've talked to that throughout here already. Simple things like personalizing, but based on your online behavior, where you're hanging out digitally, giving the appropriate message and appropriate next step or next steps from that. So creating stuff that's relevant at the appropriate time interval and with the appropriate volume. I think I used the analogy just as we were talking amongst ourselves here, the newsletters, whether you get that weekly, every bi-weekly, monthly newsletter versus some of the newsletters or things that you get in your inbox that are more frequent, like daily or at a higher volume, they tend to become noise after a while. And I don't know if that's just a me personal preference type of thing, or if it's a matter of the volume just in my inbox or the quality of that content or a combination thereof. But those were a couple of the things I thought. I don't know, anything you want to add or?
Yeah, so I think the personalization piece is just becoming more and more important. It's just becoming an expectation. So now if I'm getting an email where I am not at all the target for it, it's immediate delete for me or unsubscribe, and that message does not land. People are now, it's becoming such a norm in email marketing that it's just becoming the expectation. And I think it's very apparent, becomes more apparent when that personalization is not there and it becomes just a mass email. So just really important, even just with click-through rates and conversions, I guess being able to incorporate either a dynamic message or something as little as your contact's first name, and making that content really relevant, and then even taking it one step deeper and sending it to me at the time that I want to receive my emails. So optimizing that sending time based on your behavior, all something that's capable in a marketing automation platform.
Yeah, you bet. All right. Anything I think we've kind of talked to this. Everyone has different flavors of, I guess, preference to the concept of account-based marketing, but I think a lot of the tools we're seeing here in the marketplace that are now being architected around the concept of account-based marketing. And I think one of the shifts we've seen is just even looking at it from kind of a CRM architecture point of view to a marketing automation architecture point of view is centered around the individual contact versus a lead record or an origination point, a lead that then flows into a project or a job or a sales opportunity or a case. Now, I think what we're seeing more is just around the person, where I could enter the system as a contact, but then have cases and all those other things I just mentioned spring off of me as the fulcrum of the system. Anything you want to add, Britt?
I just think the trend that we're noticing is we're moving away from tags, which are more related to static segmentation. So that could be industry, gender, age. More static traits are typically related to tags, where we're seeing that trend more towards behavior segmentation, and a lot of that is driven just through AI or collecting behavior through your events and having all of that integrated in one platform.
Yeah, taking demographic behavior, who you are, where you live, your education level, etc. Firmographic behavior, cross-laid with firmographic behavior, who you're working for, what your company industry is, macroeconomic factors in that industry, and what the competitive landscape looks like, cross-laying those, and then shaping a customer journey based on individual behavior, as you said. All right, the best part of this conversation, GDPR. Where shall we start? Over to you, Brittany.
Well, it's hard to really talk about all this data that we're collecting without talking about GDPR. I think it was you, Luke, that made a good point yesterday. Like, this is not going to go away or become any less than what it is now. It's just going to continue to increase. So I would just recommend making this a top consideration. It's important, and I guess the fines to not comply are pretty hefty, but also will have a big impact on the trust that your consumers have too. So having the unsubscribes, and I would just recommend getting a marketing automation platform that will do this easier for you and manage the process for you. So a lot of platforms will not allow you to send an email if it doesn't comply and include the unsubscribe in the right format. And just be cautious when you're looking into which platform you're choosing. I would say this should be on the top of your priority list for requirements. So a lot of the free platforms don't include this for you. So just something to consider.
Yeah, there's no free lunch, and I think the people that are serious in this space are, both from a product vendor point of view, they're building that in standard fare, and any marketer that's taking this seriously, they're taking this into consideration to be compliant and to actively manage this risk. I don't think you can mitigate the risk of collecting personal data from people, but you can certainly manage it to ensure that you're minimizing your exposure to some of these types of things. And obviously there's greater sensitivity depending on the industry you're in. Healthcare, financial services are two that just pop out top of the mind, but there's a lot of compliance-based information being retained and privacy related pieces there. So the second group being the person pushing a lot of this content out. So taking that seriously, I think they kind of end in their own category. And I think you've got savvy consumers on the recipient side of that. We're all a lot of us fall on both sides of that. So just you're painting a picture for who you are and the level of professionalism, I think, for your business if you take the free lunch path. So with that said, do we have anything else we wanted to add, or are we good to move on?
Yeah, I think we're good to move on. If anyone has any questions around GDPR, double opt-in, some of the requirements, I know it can be pretty convoluted when you're trying to research and get some clear answers. So just reach out to us and we can help answer any questions you have.
Seems like my slides have frozen, but we are wrapped up for the most part. Do we want to take some further questions?
Sure, if anyone has any questions, you could just type them in the chat window and then we can go through those. Okay, I don't see any questions, but like I said, if anything comes up and you have any questions or need advice, let us know. We're happy to help in this regard, and we can also help if you're needing to get started with email marketing, graphic design, need help assessing which technology you should be investing in. That's all stuff that we have quite a bit of experience in. So we're happy to sit down and chat with you about that.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining this afternoon. Hopefully we left you with a few pieces of knowledge or nuggets of wisdom here that you can find practical and put into play here for yourselves. And thanks for your time.
Thank you.